Hummingbirds off the deep end here at the CCA workbench. I've got my guys from the C1 fishing team, Captain Q, Billy, and Johnny Cooper. You know, Q, what is it that you look for in really good baits?
Actually, Rick, you want that bait to look like it did when you caught it, when you put it out. You want a bait that's like jumping out of your hands, that's shooting a rooster tail across the surface. You know, if that bait is lazy, it's not going to pull a fish up from 20 to 30 feet down. You need a bait that's jumping, skipping, fighting, digging constantly. That's what will make a sailfish 20 to 30 feet down come up to bite the bait.
Okay, now we're talking about sailfish baits. What kind of baits are you referring to, Q?
Well, a lot of times we'll use goggle eyes on the windier days. We use thread fins, we use sardines, we use pilchards. That's like our primary baits.
All right, so we hear the term seasoning baits all the time, and we've got some video here. Why don't you tell me about what this is?
Well, when you season a bait, you need the baits to be ready to go wherever you're going. And if I take a bait and I catch it today, and I try to transfer it, say, to Key West or Islamorada to fish a tournament, that bait's not going to survive. It's weak, it hasn't eaten. So when we season a bait, we'll catch them, depending on how far the tournament is away, by putting them in a pen that's got plenty of room, by feeding them krill, by feeding them pellets, by just basically nurturing your bait back to where it was health-wise when you caught it.
Now, is there anything that you practice, Q, when it comes to dipping baits?
You always want to dip one at a time, because when you mix the baits in a net, they're bumping into each other, knocking scales off. You basically try to use one or dip one at a time into the well, one at a time back into the pen. Okay, you don't want to like do 2 and 3 at a time unless you're just practicing and it's really not that important. A lot of times, if you're just going out for a practice day, you'll throw 2 or 3 in the pen, in the net, into the well, and it doesn't really affect them that bad.
That's some great stuff on baits. Now, Johnny, you know, you and Billy are two of the mates. One guy works on one side, the other guy works on the other, and I want to tell you, bridling the baits or rigging the baits, how is it that we do that? What do we typically do?
Well, I think a lot of guys still just simply hook the bait in the back with a hook. We elect to bridle them, which you take a needle with a rubber band on the end. The rubber band is attached to the hook. You penetrate through the bait fish. There's kind of a sweet spot. You don't want to go too deep and jeopardize hitting the spine and killing the bait. But on the other hand, you don't want to go too shallow where you don't have a big enough bite with the rubber band where under pressure, when the fish grabs it, it'll simply just break and get picked off. So basically the hook is just kind of riding on the back of the bait. And what that does is it doesn't totally eliminate, but it certainly reduces the odds of the hook turning back in the bait, which we've all had that happen. It's very disappointing. But more importantly, it gives the hook the flexibility to rotate around when the fish bites and you start to feel that pressure. It gives that hook the flexibility to rotate around and do its job, because it's a circle hook. It needs to find that spot.
Now, we have different size baits. We have a goggle eye, which has a tendency to be thick. Then we have thread fins, and then we have sardines that have a tendency to be much thinner. What size hooks are we going to be using on the different kite baits?
It's usually somewhere between 5, 6, and 7s, depending on the bait. And we'll usually put the bigger baits on the long because the weight helps to keep it down. And it's like Q says, if we have the luxury of having those 3 different species of baits, we'll put all 3 out on one side. And hopefully after 3 or 4 fish, maybe you'll start to see a pattern. You'll crack the code of what they prefer that given day. Most of the time, the bites are distributed pretty evenly through the species of baits, but every once in a while you'll see a preference, and then you'll key on it. You may mix it up a little bit.
Now, on the C1 fishing team, we rigged the boat with certainly 10 spinning rods. This is the Azor 80, loaded up with 20 Suffolks. We're certainly using the 15-foot leader, a heavy to medium size rod action, and then our conventional was the Andros. This holds actually 750 yards of 20 high-vis Suffolk Superior. And then certainly that would be the cork, so we can measure. One last thing, Q, how high do we want that cork, and why is it important to make sure we have a limited amount of leader in the water?
Well, first off, you're trying to eliminate the fish seeing any leader. So on a calmer day, the best luck you're going to have is having that bait right on the surface, where basically almost the hook and the leader is in the air. and that way the bait is fighting harder. On a rougher day, say an east wind is 8 or 10 foot, I try to keep the bait a little bit lower because it's harder for a fish to see the bait that's right on the surface splashing when they're coming up, you know?
Thank you for taking such a great amount of time out of
You
your
got it. Thank
deal,
you.
Billy. Thank you for being here. We
welcome.
couldn't do it without these guys.